Otterbock is a world-leading company in prostheses and recently celebrated its 100th birthday. In doing so, Otterbock published a book called Futuring Human Mobility. What does the future hold in the areas of prosthesis and medical technology?
Whenever a new technology comes up, our industry has to pick up this technology because it's so difficult to replace what we have to replace. We never will be able to replace limb loss because what nature developed we can't really replace. So this is, I have to state this in the very beginning. So, but this leads us that at any time we have to grab whatever is available in technology and have a close look and see how we can make use of this technology for improving our systems and devices. In general, our motivation is, our vision is, or at least my vision is, to let the disabled person forget his or her disability. What I expect for the closer future is that we make better use of the current connectivity we have with our cell phones networks, 5G networks, just to improve one thing. And one thing is the problem that, you know, this person is really completely relying on this piece of technology. If you want to walk, you need two legs. So if a prosthesis and if it's a mechatronic system, it fails, you really have a much bigger problem than just when your car fails. So predictive maintenance is a topic which will be of really very beneficial for the user because of this dependency of the devices. So this is one of the things which will come, on what we are working for. Other topics are, of course, more in the functional area. So we will have better controls on systems by use of pattern recognition or machine learning algorithms. So this will be more and more relevant in the field. So this is a pretty important topic for the future. But also to make use of new technologies in manufacturing, like 3D printing, for example, for mass individualization. So this area is just a really good area for technologies like this, who have perfectly individualized systems based on the new technologies in the area of mass individualization.
Introducing digital technology into healthcare leads to health data, to an enormous increase of health data, and this might raise some concerns about data privacy. Where do you see the most important areas of data privacy in healthcare?
Well, the most important thing is that the user, the patient, feels secure about how these data are handled. So first of all, there has to be a clear consent that the user or the patient really voluntarily gives away data which are health data, for sure. So this will be a key topic. Of course, in times like this, persons are more open to share data, but of course, health data are very sensible data, and therefore this will be necessary that there will be that it is objective, it's clear, and it's transparent how data are used and how data are handled.
In the ICT sector, certain technologies are key enabling technologies for companies, but also for countries, and even on a global scale. So while artificial intelligence and big data is often attributed to the US, to Facebook and Google and so on, and now there's an important debate about 5G, which is then attributed to China. Do you think that in the area of health data and health care, Europe could play a leading role?
If Europe does the right thing, we just talked about the sensibility of healthcare data, and I think if Europe puts an effort in developing the right solutions, that the patient can be the owner of this data, and the patient has security that he is in control what happens to his data if these technologies are developed. This could be a game changer, and if Europe is prepared for this, if Europe takes the disadvantage Europe has right now because of data protection laws, if they take this disadvantage into advantage and technologies are developed so that we can handle this in the right way, then I'm sure that Europe will have a significant advantage over other countries and regions.
You said Europe should take care of these issues. European policy, European companies, European citizens?
It has to be a common effort. It has to be policies, it has to be European companies. The right programs have to be developed. So this is really key, that politics takes care of the legal framework as well as on infrastructure projects, and there's a close interaction with companies and universities.
The Living Innovation Project deals with smart homes on the one hand and smart health on the other. Will smart health devices, will wheelchairs in the future communicate with a smart home?
I think right now we are in the stone age of communication. I'm sure that in the future everything will communicate with everything. So this will be just obvious. So of course standards have to be developed, but who did think 15 years ago, many people did laugh about Bluetooth. Right now every device communicates with Bluetooth. So there will have to be more technologies, and this communication has to improve a lot. But I'm sure that the future will be that IoT will be absolutely in everything. Every device will communicate in the future and will be able to talk with others.
What is the added value for the user, for the consumer, if all these devices talk to each other? What is the added value of someone using a wheelchair if the wheelchair talks to the fridge?
There are very simple topics like opening a door or turning on and off the heater or turning on and off the water taps, which is very, very obvious. But of course, there are other topics like communication with friends and neighbors. Lots of projects are out there anyway. So it will be on the one hand the communication part which will be taken over, or which will be supported, especially for persons with a restricted mobility. And on the other hand, to be just to have more comfort, make life easier. Also other topics like reminders for training, for exercise. So these are therapy devices which interact. You can think about mattresses in the bed which interact with the patient, so that there are no decubitus, there's no risk for decubitus. Of course, key is this man-machine interaction. So this will be the key topic, to have a perfect interaction so that all these things are collaborative. So, and this is key, so that the user is not dominated by the machine. So the user has has to have this under control, and the user shouldn't be an engineer.
In many cases, the added value of a smart home is about convenience. Sometimes these are new gadgets, or it's about energy saving. In the area of smart health, there could be a larger proposition, a larger promise. There could be the promise to say, if you're old and you need care, you will move to the nursing home half a year later, 1 year later, because of smart technologies. Is this realistic?
I believe this is very, very realistic because there are new technologies out where you don't need a lot of sensors, where you really can do this with a minimal effort on sensors. If you use the right algorithms, you can get a lot information about the behavior of a person in this environment and support this behavior as soon as you can see. So you can take all the fear from relatives, friends about living in this area. So this is on short future. This can be expected on short future. In addition, communication will improve. So if you look on interaction by web-based, especially if you have higher bandwidth with 5G, so that this is even more realistic. Then you can have an easy communication with persons even if you are not there. There are other topics which are more complex, which is hygiene, private care, and so on. There is a lot of things to do, and we can see that the progress is very slow. You can see these care robots in Japan evolving very slow, but I believe at some point they will be there, that there will be appropriate support, appropriate benefit out of these technologies.
So will these new technologies also have effects on our healthcare system, or do they need a change in the healthcare system?
There's no transparency on costs. If there would be transparency of costs, there would be far higher investments in preventive medicine. And I believe that these new technologies will play a more and more significant role in prevention medicine. And it's not only my belief. If you look what Google is doing, if you look what Apple is doing, you can see that these companies are investing a lot of money in this area because they believe this is a fantastic future market for them.
Healthcare and prevention often means also to change the habits of people, nutrition habits, sportiness, whatever. How can devices, how can apps, how can tools change the behavior?
Simply by reminding you. So if you are not reminded, by reminding you and by helping you that you don't cheat yourself. So if your device, if your smartwatch sends you objective information, then you can't cheat yourself, because we are all world champions in cheating ourselves. And also, of course, with technology like chatbots and so on, you not only can have these objective data, you can have motivation coming from these devices, which not only remind you, but also challenge you, and we all want to be challenged. So if you can automate this to some extent, these devices will become more lifelike, and so you can, by doing so, you will create a lot of motivation, and therefore it will improve the health status of the whole population. I'm absolutely convinced about this.
How does Ottobock design its innovation ecosystem, and what are the main components of Ottobock's innovation ecosystem?
Ottobock is a medical device manufacturer, and of course this is a highly regulated area. So therefore, the R&D processes have to be documented, and there are lots of regulations which have to be taken care for. And this is done in a regular R&D environment with lots of processes, product involvement process, which is clearly defined, which is clearly specified. And this is the backbone of the OTTOBOCK innovation machine. Adjunct to this, there is a unit which is called Global Research, which does lots of projects, partly translational research, lots of interactions with universities and also other company partners. And this part of the R&D organization has a clear strategy and has clear focus areas where they act. But in addition to this, there is a unit which deals mostly with these digital topics, and this area is separated from the standard R&D organization, and it's organized in what we call internal startups. So they are organized like internal startups. This area is headed by the Chief Digital Officer, which is at the moment, I have this role at the moment, and I report directly to the CEO of the company. Of course, these internal startups have a lot of contacts and partners with real startups. So this is all embedded in a startup environment and acts like this. Of course, there are some the smaller ones are clearly managed like a startup. Of course, the digital office has to take care of the overall controlling and the alignments with the line organization. The bigger ones already have a little bit more the character of a program, so you have there really program management, because they do more like a typical startup, because they have already too many parallel sprints. But still they are organized completely independent from the line organization.
How much time do you give for such a kind of internal startup to prove its concept or even to be successful?
The startups have to be successful in a time period of 1.5 years. Then we have only a 3 months. We have a 3 months evaluation of the results. And we have targets which have to be achieved in 1.5 years. If it's not successful, the startup will end.
And what is their motivation? What do they get out of it? Why do they do it?
Of course, the content is cool, and to work in the startup mode is pretty interesting. So we got lots of persons out of the line organization who wanted to do so. They did take a risk, because many went out of their career plan they had, and to a very uncertain way, because they all know that this is a temporary organization. Because even if a startup is very successful, at some point it has to be merged with the line organization, of course. So they take a risk. They all know that they will be taken back, but they don't know what their job will be then. If they stay in the line organization, they have a clear idea how their career will look like. But still, there's a high motivation to work within the startup.
Do you involve users or citizens as well?
Sure, but this is already a standard topic. But especially in the typical, if you work in a startup mode, one of the principles to work, I don't have to explain you, of course, but the typical concept is that you organize yourself in sprints, and if you have, at the end of the sprint, you have to check what you have done. Otherwise, you shouldn't work in a startup mode. startup mode means you have to work with a higher level of uncertainty what you are doing, and you have to do this reality check with real persons, not with the management.
The European Union put forward the concept of responsible innovation during the last 5-6 years. And many research organizations have taken it up, also some funding organizations, while on the other hand, industry still struggles with understanding what could be meant by responsible innovation. What is your understanding of responsibility in innovation, of responsible innovation?
Well, for me it's a little bit difficult because working in this environment you feel permanently responsible to improve quality of life of the persons we are working on. But especially on the technology area, it's important that you really take care that the technology you develop is not only used for an elite of the population.
Thank you very much.
Gerne.